pyroskamos, the alchemical marriage, the sacred union, is always in the individual's heart. Cannot happen anywhere else. For monks, for nuns, for, people in
the rebus.
Gay relationships. Yeah, exactly. It's the hermaphrodite. All of us have a hermaphroditic soul. Hermaphrodite. Hermes is perception. Aphrodite is love. The hermaphrodite is loving perception. The ordinary context that we're given is, we're these little beings in these little bodies, and that's absolutely true. We are these finite creatures. And then we have an infinite dimension, too. And I think what our world so sorely lacks is that bridge between the finite and the infinite. And to me, that is what the soul is. Part of why our society is so crazy is because nobody has a language or a context or a sense of deep permission to actually inhabit the fullness of their souls.
In this kink, what is the cost of the kink? What is the cost to get off this way?
What is the purpose? What is the ultimate aim of this unconscious part that is driving me to do this?
It's a power game under a different name.
Experience life playfully as a soul rather than as just a tragic, mortal, put-upon creature. Because that element of play can only come in when we are standing in that bridge between the finite and the infinite.
I don't believe that there is any truth that can be separated and disambiguated from love.
Yes.
Like truth and love are synonyms. In this first podcast recorded after our highly controversial podcast with Vailana Marcus, Alana Beal, and Dr. Gaffney, we sit down with Carolyn Lovewell, who asks the penetrating questions: do we get turned on by the negativity in our life? Do we get turned on by the drama? Are we addicted to playing the victim? She wrote about this in a globally recognized book that you've probably heard of called Existential Kink. Do we have a kink for the hard stuff, the nasty stuff? And so we explore that here on this podcast. She moves through some variations of her own way to deal with internal family systems to give you the tools to help heal what might be actually causing you to step back into those negative patterns. And she also opens the door to a whole realm of magical practices that at first had me going, But then ultimately, as I felt her energy, as I felt her connection to the archangels, to Yeshua, I could see the purity of her transmission, and I opened my heart and mind to the possibility that there's more magic in this universe than we could even fathom. So I hope you guys love this podcast with Carolyn Lovewell as much as I did. Dr. Carolyn Lovewell, you're here.
Aubrey Marcus, I am.
Wow. Wow. And we got Vailana, and we got children, and we got your beloved assistant, doula, night school, magician that's Layla is also here with you.
Yeah, she's here. She's so hot. Oh my God, yeah.
So fundamentally, you wrote a book, Existential Kink, that made a dent in the source code. Like for real. That's and I want to first just give you so much credit and applause to come out and make a book that is referred to as often as your book is referred to. And the idea that Existential Kink is now in the living colloquial vernacular of the world. Like, kudos to you. Kudos to you.
Yes. It's it's alive because it's a magical word.
Yeah.
It comes from magical work. And I'm very, very pleased about what I've seen it galvanize in people's lives. I've seen profound transformations, and we were just chatting, and I was saying that to me, the biggest shadow in the collective human consciousness is the attachment to seeing ourselves as victims. And the way that puts us on that victim triangle, that Cartman drama triangle, where there's victims, persecutors, and rescuers. And the very fun thing about Existential Kink is oftentimes when people read it, it's their first big jolt into stepping out of that shadowy consciousness. Because it's our society has basically become, in many ways, a Olympics of victimization. Who's more victimized? Who is the most oppressed? Who is the most put upon? And people try to leverage, all sorts of things, power and sympathy and social capital based on their degree of having been victimized. And this creates this very interesting phenomenon where people get rewarded for seeing themselves in a disempowered way. And I'm not saying, of course, terrible things happen in the world. Anyways, we can get into lots of stuff.
Well, what's interesting about it is in that paradigm, the more disempowered you are, the more power you have.
Yes.
Because the more purview you have to say whatever you want. Because if you're the leader of the Victim Olympics, then you have actually, the right to speak. So it's been this kind of inversion of a more traditional power model, which is the fully empowered. But then you disempower yourself to such a point, and then you actually get power.
Yes.
It's a power game under a different name.
Precisely. It's really fun. And I'm so glad that we've been playing it so vigorously.
We have. We've been really, if you're in the Olympics, you go full out.
You got to commit.
You got to commit. You go for the gold. You go. And I think, this is one of these, when you talk about kink, it's such the right word too, because there's all of these neurochemicals, there's all of these, social capital factors, there's all of these things that give a certain type of pleasure to this. And to become aware that, oh, wait, do I enjoy the drama? Do I really actually like it? Am I finding myself in the same relationship patterns over and over again because I enjoy it? And that becomes a very interesting question that is very confronting and ultimately liberating.
Yes, very confronting. And the liberation comes, I think, when people let the question hit them in such a way that they get in touch with a larger context. So lots of folks talk about being content creators. I like to be a context creator. And the context, the ordinary context that we're given is, we're these little beings in these little bodies, and that's absolutely true. We are these finite creatures. And then we have an infinite dimension, too. And I think what our world so sorely lacks is that bridge between the finite and the infinite. And to me, that is what the soul is, both in a classical mystery tradition, Neoplatonic context, and also, just practically speaking. So I think part of why our society is so crazy is because nobody has a language or a context or a sense of deep permission to actually inhabit the fullness of their souls and to experience life playfully as a soul rather than as just a tragic, mortal, put-upon creature. Because that element of play can only come in when we are standing in that bridge between the finite and the infinite. And something that, anyways, so I think one of the fun things about existential kink is it can be a quick on-ramp into that more playful, soul-oriented experience of life where you're really in the crossroads, in the crucifixion of being simultaneously completely finite, rather powerless, nailed on the cross of space and time, and also utterly infinite and God and at one with everything. And it's like, whoa, how do we actually live in that? And there's been so much, our society has been so deeply dedicated to the dogmatism of scientific materialism, which is a very strange religion that's very joyless. And I do not recommend it.
Well, yeah, it captures one aspect, which the Rosicrucians would call the Ahrimanic aspect, which is everything that can be weighed and measured is real. Everything that cannot be is not real. So all values or stories of value are false, or they're fictions or figments of our imagination. The soul is not real. God is not real. You can't weigh and measure it, so it's not even part of the paradigm. So you're living in this constricted false paradigm that those of us who have journeyed beyond the veil or beyond the pale is something that, it doesn't fit in that worldview. And so there's that as a kind of the new religion, as Nietzsche proclaimed, God is dead. I think this is what he was talking about, is that we've moved to a place where everything has to be weighed and measured. And then there's old systems that have fundamentalist dogma, and I'm not just picking on the big religions, even the indigenous religions, even the First Nations religions, they still have their dogmatic aspects. And then there's those who are in the kind of messianic consciousness in all of these traditions that say, let me actually revisit these live in the moment and test them and scrape them, as the Buddha said, like test and scrape my ideas, find if there's the pure gold within that. And I think that's our real responsibility, is to each of us ourselves test and scrape the truth and see what we can find. And, not be surprised if we find something in our own shadow, in our own psyche. I think that's, and I would be curious if you agree, like one of the key components of doing shadow work is you cannot be afraid or ashamed of what you see in the shadow.
Oh, yes.
Because if you are, it's going to stay in the shadow. But if you're willing to actually look at it and say, maybe, let me explore.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I think has been a great boon to me in all shadow integration work and all healing work in general is really internalizing a principle that I learned from my teacher, Robert D. McDonald, who's a pioneer of amazing kind of healing work. And he teaches that innocence is infinite. There's no part of me that's not completely loving and completely innocent. Even the parts of me that, seem really, really critical, that seem like they want to kill me, that seem like they want to take me into addictions, that seem like they, are encouraging me to lie or hide. Every single part has a positive intention that it's trying to fulfill, sometimes unskillfully. Sometimes the parts need me to reach out to them, whether with existential kink or with dream work or with other methods, so that I can meet with them and connect them to the center, the larger center of my being, and give them more skillful means of fulfilling their roles. But there's no such thing as an inner enemy. And there's no such thing as an outer enemy either, even though there certainly are evil actions in the world. All evil actions, like the Buddha said, ignorance. Evil is ignorance. It's all just unskillful.
One of the three great poisons in the Buddhist tradition.
Yes.
Yeah, I've wrestled with this because on one aspect I totally agree that all of these forces that are pulling against you, whether it's Phil Stutz's Part X, it's the Native American Wetiko, it's the Toltec predator, it's the biblical Hasatan, the opponent, the adversary. All the darkness serves the light. All of it ultimately is an opponent that we actually get to meet, confront, and then respond to. And this is part and necessary for our evolution. Like if you went into a gym and you removed all the heavy things and all the machines that allow you to go fast and move hard, it would be a very ineffective gym. And this is like, Paul Chek says, we're in a spirit gym. We're in a place where we're training and we're putting ourselves under a load.
We are. And I'm so, as I was telling you, I'm so impressed by the work that you're doing to have the conversations and to live the path of bringing all into honesty and transparency. And the curiosity arose in me, Aubrey. I'm just wondering, what has been your experience with existential kink as a concept, book, with applying it? How has it been useful to you?
The thing about it is it's difficult to actually admit that you may like the things that you pretend that you don't like, right? Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. Really? Why do you keep feeling that way?
That is
like
really
why if you don't like it, why do you keep doing it? And so I have a kink for feeling impotent and powerless.
Me too.
It obviously has to be a kink. Otherwise I wouldn't keep going back to that point. And so I think really in assimilating this concept, you have to really take those hard looks in the mirror and say, bro, you like this. Or if you're, sis, like, you like this. Now, maybe let's learn to like something else more. How about that? But to take the ownership that, we do have the power, like Frankl said, like, the last of the great human freedoms is our ability to choose an attitude towards any given circumstance. Like, we have that ability, and maybe we need to hone that ability more, but we also have to understand that it's possible that you don't want to, that you don't want to change in some level, because you're in the kinky, juicy parts of all of these psychological aspects.
Yes. Well, there's so much rich, deep, dark, secret joy in these places, and especially in the places of feeling powerless in some way. There's so much, how do I say, jouissance, I think is the French word for it. There's a jouissance, a pleasure that is so great that it overwhelms one, and it cannot even enter the conscious. It can eventually with enough work, but it's very difficult for it to enter the conscious mind. So like a deep exploration that I've been in has to do with pain, my pain getting activated in my relationship. So I adore my husband, David Lovewell. He is the love of my life. He brings me so much joy and so much support. And sometimes he says things in a bit of a gruff way that just really it ouches me. And in the first years of our marriage, I would respond with so much blame and resentment whenever I got ouched that way. I would immediately go into how dare you speak to me like that? I was not vulnerable about it at all. I was just vengeful about it whenever it happened. And there's a lot of discord around that. And because the pain that had arose in me was so deep and connected to so much childhood stuff that it was almost like being tortured every time it happened. Even though it was just the smallest thing, it was like the full weight of torture would arise. And so I was walking around feeling tortured. And there was some part of me, it's a little bit hard to put together, but I guess I got in touch with the kind of deep, evil vampire serial killer torturer who lives inside of me, who's like Hades, the lord of the underworld, Pluto, like the kidnapper, just the cruel one. That is, you were talking earlier about Ahriman and all of those dark things. I've got in touch with a way that there's a certain way in which that archetype of evil for me, that Satan, that adversary, is this vampire. And I was having these dream encounters with these vampire figures. And I've been on such a rich, wonderful journey this year, actually, with a practice of praying over wine, praying over cacao, and taking it as the Eucharist, taking a sip of the blood of Christ, and letting the vampire within me, this evil vampire who wants to, conquer and destroy and torture and is so sadistic and so, feed on what he wants to feed on, which is the blood of innocence, which is the blood of Christ, and have that, let Christ meet what Christ wants to meet, which is the Antichrist, which is, let it all be redeemed. And something I could go on and on, but I'll pause.
Yeah, no, it's beautifully said. And, so this force, I'm in the final stages of writing the first draft of a huge manuscript cut down from 200,000 words. We're currently at 140. We're probably going to have to end up at 120. So there's going to be a lot on the cutting room floor, but it's you versus anti-you. And it's the idea that these forces they're deeply personal and wildly universal. We see them on the cultural level. We see them on the cosmic level, but we can find them in the personal level. And so what are the 13 moves that you can make to overcome and actually live in your soul's fullest potential? So in that process, I think the figure of Jesus, of the Christ, is, such an important figure, and I use the metaphor of the rose as a way to love, which is Christ's love is like the rose. It gives its scent and its beauty to everyone, without judgment, without flinching. And in our dimensional reality, we still need the thorns of discretion, which say I love you, but you can't trample me. And so it's the paradox and the balance of that Christic love, which is like the flower of the rose, and the discretion necessary to navigate this this dimensional existence of physicality, of this density of consciousness. And it's interesting. I was just taking a walk yesterday, and I posted it on my story, and there was a big, giant graffiti sign that looked intentional. It says, Jesus loves you more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jesus loves you more. And I was like, yeah, because that type of love is a love that holds no record of wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's what really Jesus or the Christ stands for. It's a love that holds no record of wrong. It's a love that can love anything and everything. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And that Christic level of love, it's so hard and also dangerous to embody that.
Oh, yes. People really hate it.
Yeah.
They try to kill it.
Yeah, of course. And that, I mean, there's lots of great philosophers who talk about the murder of Christ in that way, like that. There's something about that evokes, the enemy, the opponent, the Hasatan, the adversary. It something comes to meet that in a certain way because it's revealing something that's real and available. And I just, but that doesn't mean that, we shouldn't still use that as one of the brightest guide stars in our night sky.
Yes.
And I love the practices that you're mentioning about how to take these old and often hollowed out, liturgical practices and actually make them meaningful again.
Oh my goodness. So
like,
Layla.
That's so cool.
Yes. My friend Layla, who came here to support me today, she is a genius and she is a big liturgical nerd. And she has been so helpful, as has my husband David and my other friends, in forming the backbone of what we do at Sleepover Mystery School, which is the world's only publicly available initiation into the Western esoteric tradition. And what we do is take people into ceremony without plant medicines, without substances, just with the raw liturgical, theurgical inheritance of essentially tantric Christian Hermeticism.
Cool.
And we take them on a wild ride, and it's amazing. It's just so delightful to see the transformations that happen from from what is possible when we are in a living relationship with these symbols, and we're not in a deadened, distant relationship, but rather they're functioning as enzymes that go in and start altering things.
I hope you all are enjoying this podcast as much as I am. I want to talk to you about Correct Life. That's our new supplement company, and we just launched a new product called Fuel. Now, this product combines exogenous ketones, which help give you that mental clarity and actual physical energy, and we combined it with electrolytes and also trace minerals, and then a compound that comes from green beans called metabolite, which helps train the body to use your own fat stores as a source of energy. So it's a product that combines many things that we're already probably using. And if we're not, it's great for hydration, great for those pickleball matches, great for long days where you're just rehydrating your body, or even in your morning mineral cocktail. And then we also have, of course, Correct Energy, which focuses on that caffeine metabolite called paraxanthine, which is really like the spirit of caffeine, and then surrounds it with a bunch of natural extracts to enhance the ability to just be your best self. It's the most subtle and powerful energy formula I've ever felt. And really, these products are the core of what Correct is all about. And we'll expand from here, of course. We have Correct Fitness coming down the line soon. But really, this is about how do you have products and information that you can put in your toolkit that will up-level your life every single day so you can be a little better tomorrow than you are today. And that's something that we all need. So if you go to correctlife.com, that's KORRECT life.com, you can get 15% off your first order. Once again, correctlife.com. Let's talk, I want to hear some more stories. I want to hear some stories of existential kinks and people coming to the revelatory moment. And these could be personal stories. They could be nameless, friend X, friend Y, patient Z. Talk about some stories of people who've become aware of their existential kink, and then what that, and what that was, and then what the resolution was?
Yes. So the funny thing is that I've heard so many thousands of these stories that they kind of blur together in my mind.
Sure.
I can tell you, I could tell you my own story about getting off an existential kink, and I would love it if you have one.
Okay.
So the very first time it happened for me, I was living in an orgasmic meditation house, actually, which is really fun because Nicole Daedone is on trial right now for federal charges. Have you heard about
I have.
orgasmic?
Yeah.
Yeah. So back in, this was 2014, 2015. I was at the very fringes of the orgasmic meditation movement, and I was living in because, it was mostly in Austin and Los Angeles and New York, but we had a little satellite in Pittsburgh. So I was doing this practice, which involves a stroker stroking a lady's clitoris in a very sort of military fashion with gloves and lube and a timer, and there's a whole procedure around it. And I was doing creativity coaching at the time, and I think I was charging maybe $100 an hour as a creativity coach, which already was a huge amount of money to me in the sense of like, I grew up in blue collar Rust Belt Pittsburgh where people get paid $15 an hour. And I was meeting people in the orgasmic meditation world who were being paid thousands of dollars an hour for coaching. And this blew my mind. I was utterly, and I was deep in a scarcity consciousness, a poverty consciousness that I had just inherited from all around me. And I was so ashamed of being so broke. I was like living with 10 other people. I was dumpster diving. I was sleeping on couches. I was barely getting by. I had graduated with a PhD in English, which is worth exactly nothing to no one. And I had read all this, Jung and Freud and Nietzsche, and I had this idea that there is such a thing as unconscious desires, right? I knew that. And I knew all of the new thought, secret manifestation stuff, which is like, oh, you can manifest your desires. And I looked at my life and I was like, I think I'm manifesting my unconscious desires because consciously I would like to be rich. I would not like to be living on this flea-bitten couch. I would not like to have my bank account get into the negative each month as I struggle to pay rent. I feel utterly humiliated by this. I feel really, really humiliated. And well, the interesting thing was, so I was also am really into the work of Byron Katie, which maybe you're also familiar with. Yeah, asking those 4 questions. Is it true? So I started with, I was doing the work one day on this statement, people should want to pay me $1,000 an hour for coaching. Is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? How do I react when I believe that thought? Who would I be without that thought? Those are the great Byron Katie questions. And then, you turn them around.
Right.
So the turnarounds were, I got to the turnaround of no one should ever want to pay me anything, ever. And I felt this zing through my body. I was like, I felt my genitals were just like, I was like, okay, well, Carolyn, this explains why you're broke. This explains it because you are turned on by being this broke. There's an undeniable, sensational zing when I just honestly, in a relaxed, curious way, how does this statement feel to my body? It turns me on. And I was like, whoa, Carolyn. Oh, you've got problems now because it's in sophisticated circles, it's cool to have like, oh, I like it when my lover drips hot wax on me or something. But this was a kink that was affecting my entire life. Sure. I was like, well, what are we going to do with this? And I was like, well, I'd begun to make it conscious. And I was like, there's no way that shaming this part of me is going to heal it. I knew that. I knew this part just needs to be felt. It needs to feel, it needs me to love it. And so I just began this practice, about 15-minute meditation every day, because I was used to that 15-minute stroking meditation, of orgasmic meditation, which I do believe is an excellent practice, despite whatever organizational and personal foibles may have been around it. And there was also a deep teaching in the orgasmic meditation world about how there's a resonance between the stroker and the strokee. In other words, over many thousands of hours, people doing this practice, myself included, noticed that when a stroker was really on the spot on a woman's clitoris, it would almost be like there was this pulling magnetism between the finger and the clitoris, and both could feel it, and both would talk about it afterwards, because that was always part of the OM, is to, name sensations that occurred during the practice itself. So I knew that was a thing, and I knew that it was also a thing that sometimes I would experience strokes, and I wouldn't like those strokes, and I would ask for, the stroker to change the stroke, which was also part of the practice and is also part of, general lovemaking. You can always say to your partner, like, hey, how about you touch me lighter, slower, whatever. And so I was adjusting. I would ask for, we call that adjustments. I would ask for a lot of adjustments to the strokes. And, one day I had a teacher in the orgasmic meditation world, a genius man who I love very much named Ken Blackman. And Ken Blackman said, just try expanding into the strokes that you don't like, that you would ordinarily ask the stroker to change. See if you can get off on those too. See if you can widen the range of sensation that you're willing to embrace as pleasure. And I noticed that indeed, that a stroke that would initially feel like too much or too, I wanted to change it, that if I just deeply relaxed and deeply opened up, I could be like, oh, hey, actually, and that would be the resonant stroke. So I learned through this process of being in the resonant stroke, asking the stroker to change, and then him being like, are you sure you want me to change the stroke? Because I can feel the magnet. I can feel I'm on the spot. And I would be like, yes, I'm sure. And then eventually I was like, no, you can keep, I'll try to open up there.
Yeah.
And I found out that I could open up there and that there was enormous orgasmic energy and enormous, pleasure and joy and psychedelic levels that came through when I did that. And so then the larger idea, and again, I have to give great credit to Nicole Daedone, because whatever her shadows may be, she's also a great genius bodhisattva who my work would not be possible without having had the privilege of learning from her. So she had, she was offering this idea of life is like strokes, and you can experiment with getting off on any stroke in life, just like you can experiment with getting off on the resonant stroke in the OM. And I started to realize that indeed there's a truth to that, in that whatever situation, especially the repeating situations, I'm not talking about the freak tragedies or the random, but especially the repeating situations, there is a magnetism and a resonance there. And that if I could open up to the resonant stroke, maybe I could expand my range, and maybe I could find orgasmic play and freedom and joy there. And I was also aware that there was something called the orgasmic birth movement. So there's women who learn how to open up to the very intense sensations of childbirth and experience that orgasmically. And so just knowing that was possible, I was like, maybe this is a resonant stroke. Maybe this nobody ever wanting to pay me, nobody valuing me. Maybe it's let's see if we can get off here. And I found, whoa, baby, yes, I could. When I really didn't shame it, and I really just let the sensations of humiliation and failure and people and just anxiety and everything that came with not having any money, having worked years for a PhD and just being whatever, broke. I was like, wow, there's just so much pleasure there. And it shifted my identity. And I think that is the medicine that Existential Kink can offer, is a deep identity shift. It shifted my identity from seeing myself as this pathetic, put-upon loser of a person who just couldn't win, who was being victimized by capitalism and corporatism, and rich old white men were keeping me down, into, I'm just yes, I'm still broke, and I am so turned on about it. I am so pleased. I'm getting exactly what I want, and my energy changed. And I became, I started to experience myself as a really fulfilled person with plenty to share. And I started having ideas come to me about, ways that I could grow my coaching business, and I applied them. And they weren't, any special ideas. They're just like basically the basic recommendations that anybody would get, but I couldn't follow them. I was just too stuck in my put upon identity. So I just followed some basic internet wisdom. And soon I was, making six figures, and I was able to start traveling around, and my whole life just expanded so much. And I had a similar experience I was in a really scary, abusive relationship also, where I was with this guy who would just when he was really mad at me, he would throw porcelain coffee mugs in the direction of my head.
Oh, boy.
And I broke up with him a million times. And called him up the next day. Let's forget about that. Let's try again. Because I was the way I was.
Right.
And I was in that relationship, and I was like, I couldn't seem to get myself out of it. And I'd already started to shift my money and my business stuff. And I just said to myself, well, Carolyn, I think that maybe there's something here. There's some pleasure that you have, because he was really possessive and controlling. That was his thing. Mm-hmm. And I realized there was a part of me that loved having a man treat me as if I was his heroin supply that he had to have.
Right.
And freak out if he might lose his supply. And there was a power in that. There was a dark, shadowy, vampiric power in it. And so I made that conscious. I gave that love. I fully felt it. I fully felt, oh my God, I have total power over this man. He's obsessed with me. Wow. Okay, I'm good now. And then I was able to break up with him and go on with my life and create, what I regard as a rather sane, wholesome, beautiful life. And anyways, those are the stories that are most kind of fresh because they were in my own experience. But people have, I've talked to people. There's a genius existential kink coach. So I have an existential kink coach training program called
Beautiful.
Penetrate. The first one was called Game of Sovereigns because it's all about inhabiting our sovereignty. And Sheena was in the first round, and she's a genius coach, and she was 100 pounds overweight and had all sorts of, emotional feelings and shame associated with that. She used the existential kink practice. She started doing it, if I'm remembering the story correctly. Sorry, Sheena, if I'm not. But she was, before she would eat, she would have a feeling, and normally she would emotionally eat about it. And she just began, doing the EK practice instead and coming to feel more of her experience more fully and coming alive more fully into her body. And she lost 100 pounds doing that. I've many people with, shame and humiliation are big things that people get off on that changes their whole course. Because the thing is, when you can enjoy being humiliated, many such stories, but I had a fun experience that sort of reminds me of a little bit of what you might be going through lately, which is I got myself canceled. I think I said something along the lines of, "Hi, I'm Indigenous too," and it was not taken well. It was not. And
how dare you?
Indeed. I mean, I guess I understand why people make the distinctions between colonizer and indigenous. And I'm also indigenous to this earth. I find it very strange when people talk about invasive plants. I'm like, the plants are just, they go where they want to.
Right.
Anyways, I made that point, and I had thousands of people telling me what an evil racist I was. And I had, I lost $1 million in revenue for my business because I had lots of people leave my programs so as not to be associated with my evil. And I had very good friendships were disturbed by it. And I was in this, I guess this was in like 2021, I was in this rich experience of being completely humiliated. And it was ironic because I think part of what motivated me, looking at my own piece in it, part of what motivated me to say, hi, I'm Indigenous too, was I wanted to be seen as virtuous also. If only Indigenous people are allowed to be seen as virtuous, I want to be seen as virtuous too. Sure. And so there's the part of me that had this attachment to being seen as virtuous and good and belonging on Earth and having a right to partake of plant medicines and having a right to find healing also, and feeling like I was, being, anyways, cast into the villain role, and not having enough tolerance, I guess, for the villain role. Anyways. And then I got to have people see me as the villain, have all of those those projection arrows come in. I teach a class also called Battle Magic, which is about healing from projections. And I learned a lot there. And one of the things that I learned in that experience was how fertile it is to do the kind of work that you're doing. I started to get, some of the stuff started to get under my skin. I was like, do I hate people because of their race? Am I even, Sure. And one of the things that happened is I had this dream. And I had a dream, and I saw this giant rabbit. And out of the rabbit were dropping millions of little baby rabbits. Just a shower of little baby rabbits. And I was like, wow, this is such a potent fertility symbol. And sure enough, in the wake of that cancellation, which was also, I like to think of it as an alchemical calcination, where the false foundation...
Burning away of all of the impurities.
Yes, the burning
calcination is such a good word. People don't use it enough.
Let's use it. Let's use it all the time. Calcination. I was calcinated. I was toasted to a crisp. It was humiliated. And this amazing fertility was coming through. So I knew that something about what I did was right. Maybe, I don't know, something there was fertile. Something there was truthful and fertile. And I could begin to enjoy the process of composting the ash from that calcination into the larger garden of my being. And indeed, very quickly, it grew into Sleepover Mystery School, which is, after my marriage and my children, it's the creative thing that I'm most proud of. And it's a living experience of the Existential Kink book that we take people through these 4 weekends that are ritual immersions in the Western esoteric tradition. And I have seen more love and gooiness and possibility. Like my optimism for humanity is, anyways, really sky high.
That's great.
And I'm excited for you doing this, what I know to be a deeply fertile, calcinating job of saying, you shared what is honestly in your heart.
Right.
And that's like the most taboo thing. People are so terrified of it.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to ask you, how are you enjoying this crucifixion?
Oh, wow. That's a deep question. And, so for those of you who, for whatever reason, need context, I did a podcast with my beloved, incredible wife, Ilana, and we talked about her experience, a long, robust, year-long relationship with her lover, Joshua. But with us at this table here was also Alana, who Alana and I have a deep, rich love relationship. And there's a deep, rich love and sisterhood between Alana and Vailana. And then Alana has also had her own lovers in this process. So we're in a post-conventional structure of relating. And, the audience that I have, seem to be the type that celebrate all types of post-conventional ways to love, whether it's, it's a homosexual path that you're born into or choose, or whether it's any type of different way to love, they're generally very accepting. And so my expectation was that, people would be accepting. Here we had a system, and we were going to share the system and actually share the truth of what we felt. And it's not always been easy, for sure. It's been difficult. All of us have broken down and cried and had difficult times, and it's what we're choosing. And so the expectation was that would be received with like, wow, that was brave, not for me. And we said multiple times, this is not prescriptive. We're not telling you to follow our way. We're just saying this is what is. And this is how it happened. And this is where we are. And, here we are. So the reaction, much like probably when you made that post saying that you're, an indigenous child of the earth, Aho Mataku Yeo Yasin, we are all related. We are all part of Gaia. We cannot separate ourselves from Gaia, which is, I believe, to be a fundamental truth. And maybe I'll get a whole other wave of cancellation for just saying that we're all children of God, and we're all children of Gaia, and we're all children of the earth. There are specific lineages that need to be respected, and that you have to earn the right to wear a certain type of adornment, or earn the right and be gifted the right to carry a chanupa, etc. There's lots of different practices that you can't cross those lines because they mean something. Just like I can't put on a Marine's fatigues with a purple heart on it and go strolling down Main Street. Like
right.
A real soldier will be like, hey, fuck you. Like I earned this, and here's where I got shot. And that's why I get to wear this purple heart. And so don't fucking wear this. It's stolen valor. So there's a deep truth to some of those ways, and also an acknowledgement of the extractive ways in which a lot of these cultures were treated horribly.
Yes.
And my relationship that's bloomed with Chief Bearcross and Chief Chase Iron Eyes and, these different indigenous wisdom keepers of all different lineages has really like opened my eyes to the nuance of it. And also the understanding that they will all say, like, you're all children of the earth.
Yes, they do. They
and that's,
will all
that's
say
the
that.
interesting. That's the interesting thing,
but
right?
mean people on Instagram won't.
They won't. So in any case, it was a surprise.
Yes.
It was a surprise. And I'm a little bit more used to being in the crosshairs of public, but it was something that, I felt really bad that I exposed my family to that level of attack and that level of kind of ruthless, penetrating scrutiny. But as you said, we read all the comments. We allowed it to like go in and push all the sensitive points, have all the discussions that we needed to have. And ultimately, it's become a force that was like a hormetic stressor that's made us even stronger. So it's been a beautiful process, incredibly painful, but also a beautiful process. And I think only the calculus of the omniscience of God can know whether it was the right choice or the wrong choice. But for our own lives, we've started the alchemical process of making it the right choice. And that's the decision that we've ultimately made.
Yes.
Now, did I secretly want to be in this position? Maybe. Maybe I have a crucifixion kink.
I mean, I think we all do. That's why we incarnated.
Yeah, like maybe I do. Maybe I have this kink for being attacked, and a kink for feeling injustice. Like, here's the injustice. Here's people making shit up about me and lying about this or that. And those ones, it's funny because I can really receive pretty much anything, but when someone makes up something that's completely false, and I know that the intention of their creation of something false is merely to hurt and to distort the truth for the outcome of pain, there's this feeling of like there's this injustice feeling that comes, and then there's a associated response that I feel. And just now thinking out loud, maybe I like that feeling. Maybe I like that feeling of feeling a deep sense of injustice. I don't really slip into, what I would kind of like the classic victim, because I know, even when I got in my car accident, I was like, I woke up in the hospital and I was like, this happened for me. not to me. So I have this deeply ingrained stoic kind of warrior's mentality. So I rarely engage as that, but there's a kink I have for wanting to brandish my sword.
Oh, yes.
Like I want to unsheath and brandish, and I want to go into battle, and I want to fucking lock the helmet down. And, I want to go.
Yes.
And like, that's a part of who I am. And so when I feel like the hordes are at the gates, some part of me has this kind of devilish smile that's like, aha, like, here we are. Bring me my shield. Bring me my sword. Like, let's go.
Let's go.
And so there's certainly something to be explored for me there.
Yes.
And so that's one area where I think I can take what you call the EK, Existential Kink work, and really look at. And I'm going to do that more and digest that more after this conversation. And, another one, so I'll just tell two stories, as you told, a great breadth of stories of your own existential kinks. I'll share one more story. I've been in a state of pretty much constant stress most of my adult life, of feeling like I'm not doing enough, I'm not creating enough, I'm not making enough of an impact. I'm stressed about, whether the money's going to come or not. Like, even though On It was successful, we were always dancing with, we never had a big fundraise, so we were always dancing with, how much cash flow do we have? Where are we going? What's going on? And I was always like, at every month, like, okay, I got just enough. Well, then I sold On It, and I had a big lump of money in my bank account. Now, the reasonable thing to do would have been to protect that amount of money so I never had to be stressed again.
That would.
But what did I do? I gave all of my exes millions of dollars, just be saying like, hey, look, you were here with me during the time I was building On It, so I'm not going to be with you anymore. I'm madly in love with Vailana. Here's millions of dollars. Then I bought 5 friends' houses, and I supported a community out there. So some of it was charitable, and I don't really regret that kind of charitable, donating millions and millions, tens of millions to different charities of different sorts. That's all. Those are the least regrets. But then there was almost gambling bets that I made on certain funds, crypto funds and private ventures that I poured so much money into these other things. And then I started kind of these wild, difficult businesses. Like I started a music festival. Now, if I actually talk to anybody, they're like, music festivals don't make money for at least 5 years. So you better be ready to bankroll it for 5 years. But I was like, I can do it. So what I managed to do is I managed to put myself back in the situation where I'm stressed. I'm maximally stressed again. And so I've had to come to terms with this. Like, I did this to myself. Why did I do this to myself? Like, why did I put myself in the same position that I've been in my whole life? And there's 2 voices. And I think giving the existential kink voice enough time to speak is important. Like, hey, like, you've entrained these neurochemical patterns, you've entrained these emotional states. Those receptor sites are hungry for that batch of chemicals. And you're an addict. You're an addict to that feeling. And so you created a world in which you're addicted to that feeling. So that's one voice. And then there's another voice, which comes from a story of Fyodor Dostoevsky. Fyodor Dostoevsky writes a best-selling book. Now, a lot of authors write best-selling books, and they don't become best-selling until they die. Nietzsche was one of them, right? Like, got no fame, got no money for his work, and now everybody's reading his books. That was not the case with Dostoevsky. He was a national bestseller. Everybody loved his work. So he got a lot of money. And he has a story of being in the gulag and getting saved from the last moment as he was about to get hung. He's had a variety of these different moments. But the one that's interesting to me is that after his successful first book, he went to write his second book, but he had so much money that he wasn't able to write anymore. So he was like, I don't need to write.
Yeah.
I can drink and go to the, baño and let some other sweaty Russian beat me with the brambles, and I can, go on with my life drinking vodka and having a good time. Like writing is a painful labor. Like, I don't think people understand how painful writing actually is. It's beautiful, but it's hard, and you're coming up against yourself. You're the diligence that's required. So he recognized that with this money, he would never write another book, and he had more books to write. So he went to an actual gambling house, took all of his money with the intention of gambling it all away. And he succeeded, of course. Of course you can succeed in gambling all your money away. I've done it in my own different ways, right? So then, once he was poor again, he wrote another incredible book.
Yes, he did.
And he wrote another incredible book. And then he repeated that process, one more time and wrote another incredible book. And so there's these two voices. One, certainly I have a kink for being in this state of high stress, because I'm used to it. And then also there's perhaps some inner intelligence that I don't trust myself to do what I need to do without the sufficient pressure to do it.
Yes. Well, what you're describing reminds me of Jung said that the unconscious will create impossible situations in order to bring out the best in us, will force us into impossible situations in order to bring out our best. And that's another angle of looking at this, which is that it's not so much maybe that Dostoevsky was torturing himself, although maybe a little bit, but he was also, his unconscious, his genius was putting him into a situation to force him to bring out his best. And it sounds like there's a part of you that suspects that maybe that is what you are doing. And what beauty, what richness in that. I mean, how to keep it fun. Keep it fun. Keep it high stakes. Keep it life or death. Keep it,
right.
Let's bring some teeth into it. Like, if it's just, I'm so rich and I can do whatever I want, create whatever I want. It's like, yes, that kind of infinite expansiveness is what God is. And choosing to be finite and choosing to experience lack and choosing to experience, I'm up against a wall, it's do or die, I have to figure this out. I mean, what fun. It's just
right. And then at what cost does that fun come?
Yes.
And so, as you said, getting those cups thrown at you, like,
I could have died. He could have killed me.
Exactly.
Yes.
So the cost is high,
It is.
And so it's, and I don't mean to speak with your words, but I think one of the lessons that I took personally is, okay, this may be a kink, but in this kink, what is the cost of the kink? What is the cost to get off this way? And what are you sacrificing, of the possible life you want to live in order to get your rocks off?
Yes, but it's very wise to ask those questions. So to me, those questions are connected with the asking, what is the telos? What is the purpose? What is the ultimate aim of this unconscious part that is driving me to do this? And it sounds like you're becoming aware that this part of you that has, invested in the music festivals and was very, very generous may have had a desire, and I'll just see if this sounds true to you, it had a desire to enhance your creativity. Is that right? Yes. So what a marvelous desire. So there's, and then may I ask you in this part some more questions about itself? So once you completely have your fully activated creative juices flowing, once this part has succeeded in giving you what it's trying to give you, like the creative powers of Dostoevsky, then what even more wonderful thing will you be able to have?
I think ultimately what I'm seeking at the base of everything is to be able to look up to God and say, God, did I do a good job? Did I do a good job? You know, like, and for God to say, like, I'm so proud of you, my son. You did great. You know, and that is really, I think, what at the bottom of everything is really what I'm looking for. And the irony is that I know God and I know the Christ avatar of God, and which is also the interesting link between the Christ and the Father, right? Like they're different, distinct, but also the same. You know, there's the Holy Trinity, but it's all love. It's all love. And it's always like, I'm so proud of you.
Yes.
It's always that. But I have these conditions that are self-imposed, culturally imposed, you know, entrained from my own father that are like, nope, you could have done better. You're not doing good enough. I'm not proud of you.
Yes. That makes complete sense to me, that the desire that you have, it sounds like, is the desire to, look up to God and receive that this is my son in whom I am well pleased.
Yeah.
The same that Jesus received, that we all, as children of God want to receive. And that desire, although you know from the richness of your spiritual experience and you're paying attention to spiritual teachings that is freely given, it sounds like there's still a childhood part that feels that he must meet conditions in order to be worthy of that, of God recognizing him fully as a child. Is that true?
It's the conditions to receive unconditional love.
Yes.
What a mind fuck that is.
Yes.
Like, here are the conditions by which I can receive the unconditional love of God. Like, hello, Aubrey. Hello.
I think, Aubrey, I suspect pretty much every one of your listeners, unless the ones that are completely enlightened already, have the same thing operating in them.
Right.
And I guess I'm wondering, I saw you doing some hypnosis work with a wonderful person you were interviewing earlier. I'm wondering if you would like to do a little bit of change work right now with that part.
Would love to.
Okay. So, Aubrey, what I want you to do is just relax, close your eyes, take a deep breath. I like to sigh, take a deep breath out. And Aubrey, what I've heard is you're aware of this part of you, this part who wants to give you this wonderful gift of the fullest expression of your creativity, the Dostoevsky level masterwork of your creativity. And even more than that wonderful gift, it wants to give you the wonderful gift of fully being able to look into the eyes of your Creator and receive, I am proud of you, son. You have done a good job. You are my son in whom I am well pleased. Yes, this part of you. Would you ask this part of you if it's willing to talk to you in consciousness now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and does it say yes?
Yes.
Marvelous, excellent. And Aubrey, can you feel this part in your body now? Or rather, where do you feel it? This part that wants to give you this creativity, that wants to give you this connection with God?
I actually feel it in my eyes. I feel it behind my eyes, and I feel it looking to the left and right. Like
yes.
Scanning the room.
That's exactly right. That's what it's doing. It's behind your eyes, and it's looking to the left and the right, scanning the room. And it's willing to talk with you in consciousness. So, Aubrey, I want you to say to this part, thank you. Just say out loud.
Thank you.
You have been giving me a wonderful gift.
You have been giving me a wonderful gift.
You want me to have the fullest expression of my creativity.
You want me to have the fullest expression of my creativity.
You want me to have the fullest approval of God.
You want me to have the fullest approval of God.
And you are working hard to give me that.
And you are working tirelessly to give me that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, that's right. Oh, excellent. You're doing excellent. So now we're going to ask this part. We're just going to say, I'm so curious.
I'm so curious.
How old do you think I am?
Well, I don't see a discrepancy where the part thinks that I'm a different age than I am, but I can ask the part what age
Yes,
it is.
that sounds great.
It says 7.
Yes, 7. The part is 7.
Mm.
So, Aubrey, I want you to say, thank you, you're 7.
Thank you. You're 7 years old.
You have been with me since I was 7 years old.
You have been with me since I was 7 years old.
You have been with me a long time.
You've been with me for 37 years.
And all this time, you've been giving me your gifts.
And all this time, you've been giving me your gifts.
I can see that you are a warrior.
My son, my little brother, my younger self. I can see your warrior heart. I can see your courage. I can see you.
So, Aubrey, now I want you to tell him I'm a lot older now. How old are you, Aubrey?
44.
Yes. So, Aubrey, I want you to let this part know you're 7, but I'm 44.
Little buddy, you're 7. I'm 44.
And when I was 7, I was dependent on my parents.
When I was 7, your age, I depended on my parents.
I had no money of my own.
I had no money of my own.
I couldn't drive.
I couldn't drive.
There was so much I didn't know.
There was so much I didn't know.
And you've been a part of me since I was 7.
And you've been a part of me since I was 7.
And I've grown up now.
And I've grown up now.
I have so many more resources than I had in the past.
I have so many more resources, experiences, and skills and wisdom than I had when I was your age.
Yes, I have learned a lot.
I have learned a lot.
I have had many lessons.
I've had many lessons.
Yes, and I've experienced many amazing things, amazing relationships.
I've experienced so many beautiful things, amazing things, miraculous things even.
Yes. Would you like to grow up with me and know and feel and understand everything that I do?
Would you like to grow up with me and take everything that I've learned, assimilate it into who you are, and grow up with me and join me at my age right now?
And what response does he give you?
Yes, can I trust you?
Of course. Aubrey, I want you to tell him that's a very wise question.
It's a very wise question.
Here's why you can trust me.
Here's why you can trust me.
I will not hurt you.
I will not hurt you.
I will not change you in any way you don't want to change.
I will not change you in any way you do not want to change.
I respect you utterly.
I respect you utterly.
My only desire is to help you get what you want.
My only desire is to help you get what you want, which is to help us in the totality and wholeness of self get what we want together.
And Aubrey, just notice, how does he receive what you've just told him?
He says, I trust you, and let's go.
Marvelous. So Aubrey say, great.
Great.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is amazing.
We're gonna keep going. There's a little bit more we can do here.
Okay.
So let's say to him, I'm wondering if you would be willing to get together with the creative genius Christ part of me.
I'm wondering if you're willing to get together with the creative genius, the flower of Christ consciousness that blooms in my own heart.
And find 3 new ways to give me your gifts.
And find 3 new ways to give me your gifts.
Ways that don't involve the kind of risky behaviors.
Ways that don't involve the risky behaviors, the behaviors that cause so much stress,
Yes.
so much pain.
Yes, 3 new ways.
3 new ways
that don't cause stress.
that don't cause stress,
That don't bring stress to my family.
that don't bring stress to my family,
That don't stress me out.
that don't stress me out.
Just 3 new ways of giving me these gifts. And my creative genius creates so much. My creative genius creates my nighttime dreams.
My creative genius creates so much. It creates my nighttime dreams. It creates the frames of perception that I view reality.
My creative genius can come up with anything.
My creative genius can come up in, as, through, from anything.
Yes, because my creative genius is directly connected to the divine.
Because my creative genius is directly connected to the source of all creation.
So, are you willing to get together with my creative genius and find 3 new ways to give me your gifts?
Are you willing to get together with my creative genius and find 3 new ways that I can unlock my greatest gifts? Yeah?
Wonderful. So, Aubrey say, excellent.
Excellent.
I don't need to know what they are.
He'd think he wants to
He wants to
go for it.
He wants to go for it. Okay, great. So Aubrey, let's tell him, find the 3 new ways and tell me when you have them. I don't need to know what they are. I just need to know that you have them.
Go find those 3 new ways and let me know when you have them. He says I got them, but it makes me nervous because I don't know exactly what he's got, but I trust
you don't know
too.
yet. Well, let's I'm realizing that there's an important piece here we can do. So Aubrey say, yes, let's grow you up first. Actually.
Let's grow you up first. He's so present, he's interrupting. So I'm going to let him try.
Okay. You want to let him try?
I just want to let him try and it's
yeah. Okay, great.
1. Listen to the whispers that come from the creative source. Listen to those whispers that emerge from your heart that give you signs and a gnosis that's beyond what your beautiful mind could even think. So 1, listen to the whispers. 2, continue to connect with all people through the eyes of unconditional love, through a love that holds no record of wrong. See the truth of every single human being as a child of God, and allow your compassion to drive you forward So be driven by compassion rather than stress or scarcity. And number 3, have gratitude for all of it. Have gratitude for everything and divorce yourself from all of the external metrics by which you judge the success of your creativity. I want you to think now of your poetry book. I'm so proud of you for making that poetry book. The sales of that poetry book, the impact, are not what defines that act of creativity. That act of creativity was beautiful in and of itself. The festival you started, yes, didn't make money, but it was beautiful. All of these things that you've done from the love of your own heart have been beautiful. And now we welcome in a brain that's wiser, a mind that's more developed, more experienced, and we merge all of this together to chart a course forward that will bring you peace, protect your family, and love the world radically and wholly, no matter what.
Let's sink this in. So, Aubrey, you like these 3 new ways?
I like them.
Yes. So, Aubrey, say, this is a system-wide announcement.
This is a system-wide announcement.
We will now begin using the 3 new ways.
We will now begin using the 3 new ways.
And cease using the old ways that brought stress.
And cease using the old ways that brought stress.
We begin now.
We begin now.
Yes, and Aubrey, when you feel this part of you, does it feel like he has now grown up with you?
Yeah.
Marvelous. So, Aubrey, how delighted are you going to be later tonight, tomorrow morning, in the days and weeks and months and years to come when you realize that this part of you has completely grown up, has completely changed the way that he gives you his gifts of creativity and deep connection and love with God and deep freedom? He's changed that. He's changed the way he gives those to you. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being a little bit surprised and 10 being very surprised, how surprised are you going to be when you realize that this has been a permanent change?
Well, I've witnessed extraordinary transformations. So the surprise level of 10 is too high because I've seen so much in the world, but I'd say what comes intuitively is 8.
Yes, 8. That is how surprised you will be when you notice that everything has changed for the better and this part has grown up and life is less stressful. Yes, thank you for being willing to do that.
Yeah,
yes.
that was profound.
It absolutely was profound. This part of you has been your friend all along. There are no inner enemies. This part of you, even though he might have gotten you into some sticky situations that have been stressful, he just loves you so much and has been giving you the most amazing things.
Yeah, really. It's this process of wholeness. It's one of my favorite things about IFS. Is this wholeness, becoming aware of these split off parts, and then bringing them back into wholeness. Just the power of the tensegrity of wholeness. Where there's no energy leaks from these exiled parts and protector parts and all these parts. It's like it's so rich.
It's so rich. It's thrilling. It's the building of Solomon's temple. It's Solomonic magic. I like to think about how, because you study the Kabbalah, so you're all up in that. Like, Solomon commanded the demons under the authority of the angels. The 72 angels of the names of God commanded the 72 demons of the Goetia. And to me, that's a metaphor for exactly what we just did, which is all demons are split off parts of the self that are confused and lacking resources. But they have more practical, energetic power than the conscious parts often. And when I think, the term consciousness can get kind of confusing. It's like, well, how do I make something conscious? And what we just did is exactly how. It's like we ask and we inquire, and you so beautifully did it. You inquired about the purpose of the purpose, the higher purpose of this part that was getting you into stressful situations.
Right.
You found the higher purpose, and so that part grew in consciousness and got connected to your creative genius, to your divine rose, and learned that it could, have new ways of giving you its gifts. So the demon got put under the authority of the angel,
right?
And now it's redeemed, and now it's not a demon. It's not split off anymore. It has been honored and embraced and reconnected, and can now participate in the building of the temple.
That's so beautiful. And, thank you for invoking, Solomon and the Solomonic lineage, because that is a big part of my life. And, one of the things about Solomon is a lot of people interpret the 1,000 wives or 10,000 wives as like literal in this kind of polygynous, archaic structure. But, as in the deeper teachings, what this is about is all of the priestesses of all the mystery schools had encoded bodies of wisdom. And to know in the biblical term is like, like Abraham knew, so-and-so, like they knew. It's like all knowledge is carnal knowledge. And so this idea that Solomon was the one who could bridge all of these wisdom schools and all this knowledge together and have that become the structure of the temple that he's building. And I, even before I understood anything of Solomon, like this was a path. All right, how do I learn from the Quechua tradition, from the Mestizo tradition, from the Lakota tradition, from the Buddhic tradition, from the mystic Catholic tradition? How do I learn from all of these and synthesize them in a way where there's a home for everything? It's like it's a temple that has different stained glass windows where you can look through your own prism, whether it's Islam or Sufism or Buddhism or Christianity or Judaism or Lakota indigenous wisdom or Aboriginal, what the old fellas believe. Like we can all look through our prism into this kind of universal temple.
Yes.
And then all the mystery schools, from the Western esotericism to the old Egyptian ways to the Eleusinian ways to the ways that we're still remembering, even as far back as the Atlantean ways and the Lemurian ways, like as much as people can remember, can we all find a way where there's a new operating system that's a context for everybody's diversity. So you don't have to let go of that which you believe, but you can actually include and transcend that into a holistic ideology that has enough space.
You know what?
For everybody.
I think I'm understanding now why you got under people's skin so much this week, Aubrey, because you have a truly integral vision. You are both listening to your inner guidance and your inner authority, and you are actively working towards this deep, integrated vision. And that is a threat to the old paradigm that people are very attached to of like, there's a rule about how things should be and how things should look, and I don't need to listen to my inner guidance. I need to follow whatever that rule is. I need to outsource my spiritual growth to this rule. And that, to tie everything back together, like it really seems to me that people's longing to do that is a longing to remain somewhat in that consciousness of victimization and that consciousness of being at the mercy of something outside.
Sure.
And to feel to feel that kind of disempowered division. So what I'm seeing is so fun, and that I think you're just really tuned into and tapped into. For me, I understand people's longing to go back to some traditional form. Like,
Sure.
people look at the chaos of modern society and they're like, oh, this is messed up, guys. We got to dial it back. We got to have some rules and some standards. We have to make it, we have to have some kind of cultural stability again. And I think folks start to long for the, traditional societal rules and formations. But it's like, it died. Like, it just died. The frameworks that used to hold us in the little silos, they're gone. They're over. They're not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
There is still much diversity and much richness to be had, but it will need to be had from a place of people navigating from the deepest meaning and the deepest inner authority that they can access, and no longer having the refuge of, well, the rules tell me to do it this way, so that's how I'm doing it. Like, that can't be the refuge from the chaos. It's something else has to be born from the chaos.
It doesn't work that way, you know. And so in integral theory and cosmoerotic humanism, there's a fundamental, way of understanding things, and it's the pre-tragic, tragic, and post-tragic, and everything moves through these stages. Mm-hmm. And the pre-tragic stage, and apologies for people who've heard me explain this before, but I think it's so prescient for this conversation. Mm-hmm. In the pre-tragic stage, everything is really clear. Mm-hmm. God says this, you do this. No questions. This is the way relationships are supposed to be. This is how you do it. No questions. Mm-hmm. And it's just so clear, and everything is so clear. And then in the tragic stage, then you start to have more information and things get confusing. And it's like, oh, shit, infidelity rates are at 65%, depending on what you're looking at. And marriages are, not staying together as long as they used to. So this is shifting, but this information doesn't fit with our pre-tragic model. So, all right, we don't know what to do about it. We're just going to pretend it's not there. And then there's fundamentalist beliefs that we're like, well, that doesn't really make sense. Like, we got dinosaur bones. So, the creationism theories are a little bit off. And, but nonetheless, then new other theories are like, maybe the earth isn't even round, it's flat. It's like, so like all this crazy.
Everything's up for grabs.
Yeah, everything's up for grabs. So, and the tragic stage is about confusion. It's about a lack of clarity, and now there used to be a God that everybody believed in, or not everybody, but most people were belief, but now that's been challenged. And then there's this new dogma of scientific materialism and scientism that's replaced. But we've seen the cracks in that, very visibly come about over the past few years. Like, oh, okay, well, there's vested interests and there's corporate capture and there's things that we have to realize. So in this tragic stage, the blush instinct is to regress to the pre-tragic. Go back to the fundamentalist ideas where everything, and it's a totally understandable idea. You just can't do it because you can't like forget all of the things that you've learned in the tragic. You have to include and transcend those things. So bring the best of the pre-tragic, bring all of the wisdom and experience of the tragic, and then enter into the post-tragic, which includes and transcends all of those stages of consciousness.
Yes.
And that's the place we're going. Post-tragic.
The comic.
Yeah.
I love this. I had not heard that framework before, and that is so glorious and so clear. I truly love that. It makes so much sense to me that absolutely is where we're going. And something that's been, I don't know, kind of hilariously ironic to me is I've seen, bless them and honor to them, some of the folks criticizing, talking about how the importance of sacred union and how marriages are should be between one man and one woman, and that's the sacred union, and that reflects the alchemical marriage, and that reflects the hieros gamos. But the hieros gamos, the alchemical marriage, the sacred union, is always in the individual's heart, cannot happen anywhere else. For monks, for nuns, for, people in
the rebus.
Gay relationships. Yeah, exactly. It's the hermaphrodite. And we all of us have a hermaphroditic soul. And, I have a voice said to me when I was 25. I was waking up from sleep, and I just heard a super clear voice, a deep man's voice say, Hermaphrodite. Hermes is perception. Aphrodite is love. The hermaphrodite is loving perception.
Whoa.
Yes. And that has, in a way, hermaphrodite is the magical word behind the magical word of existential kink for me, because existential kink is just sort of one pathway into the realization of loving perception, the realization of the hermaphrodite, which is the human soul, which is this self-fertilizing gold that can only be accessed when there is a deep bridge and a deep communication between the conscious and the unconscious mind, which can come about through prayer, meditation, ritual, plant medicine, mystery initiation, all sorts of ways, paying attention to one's nighttime dreams, paying attention to what one is manifesting in the world, and taking responsibility for it. And doing all of this, the people that I see doing this, like yourself, like Vailana, like Layla, like they are, and so many wonderful other awakening beings are doing the great work of unifying the conscious and the unconscious minds in such a way that there is a flow of communication. There is an active communication with the infinite, and there is all of the flailing around that we as finite beings get to have in being in that relationship with the infinite. When I think about Abraham being willing to sacrifice his son Isaac, following that inner guidance, which was so terrifying, and yet being willing to follow it. Or, Mary receiving the angel Gabriel being like, look, I know that you're not officially married yet, and you're like 13 years old, and you're just going to get pregnant now, okay? You're going to get pregnant, and everybody's going to think that you are a slutty, worthless whore who just got pregnant outside of wedlock, and they're going to think that your son is a bastard, and you're going to carry and birth the son of the Lord, okay? And Mary was like, yes, may it be done to me according to your word. And that is that may it be done to me according to your word, and may I say yes to this being put in this impossible situation, so that I then have the experience of, because another fun thing, maybe I'm bringing I don't know. I've also noticed people comparing you to Aleister Crowley on the internet, which I think is hilarious, because they're talking about he's hedonistically doing whatever he wants, just like that Satanist Aleister Crowley. And which I find very funny, because Aleister Crowley is a dear old astral friend of mine. He's a magician in my lineage. And anyways, you're a lot sweeter than Aleister Crowley. But, this idea, he channeled a book called The Book of the Law. And in that, there's these 3 statements. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. What am I missing? Do what thou wilt. Love is the law, love under will. Yes, love is the law. Anyways, I just made them into 2. That's all of it. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Love is the law. That's number 2. Love under will is number 3. Yes. So that expression, that statement, and unconnected to you, but just larger in general, I think about this, because people ridicule that statement as if it is some encouragement to hedonism, like just do whatever you want, do what gets your rocks off, and look at our disgusting hedonistic consumerist culture, and look at the fruit that this Satanist Aleister Crowley has sown. And because he was very influential, he influenced, the Beatles and everything, David Bowie. But do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is a statement of the most brutal asceticism, because doing what we truly will is doing that divine will, that larger will. And it's less about desire in the trivial sense than it is about meaning, than it is about following the thread, the golden thread of the greatest density of meaning. And magic is made out of meaning, and Hermes is the god of magic and the god of meaning. And I've found, and what I think the book Existential Kink teaches, and a lot of what we're circling around in this conversation, is our power as magicians comes from inhabiting our hermeneutic agency, which is our decision, like you referenced Viktor Frankl, about how we decide to interpret a situation, how we decide to see ourselves. Are we relating with love and play, or are we relating with this, victimhood that's actually a secret, fun, naughty power play? Feel sorry for me. I'm so oppressed. Give me more money, which is something that a lot of people love to do on the internet. But doing one's will is doing one's meaning, is following this thread of guidance and meaning that is the great mystery, the great feminine mystery, which has been, our society has insulted so much and refused to listen to so much, has desecrated this mystery and treated it like it's stupid, it's unimportant. We should only listen to the rational, scientific, logical, traditional rules. But being a magician means, as you are doing, truly seeking to penetrate deeper into the mystery, to make more of the unknown known, which is that act of soul remembrance, that amnesis, as Plato called it, said all education is remembrance. And when we reach in deep to that remembrance, we do bring out this, as you are experiencing, this richness of meaning and this richness of love and this richness of, synchronously coming into the right conversations, the right things at the right time. And anyways, my point being, that's the sacred union. That is the sacred union that matters. And everybody, we're all groping in the dark towards that sacred union. And the new aeon is upon us. There is no falling back into those old shelters of the pre-tragic, as you know. And I guess I just want to celebrate today how wonderful that the remembrance and the golden thread and the moving forward into the integral vision that is willing to inhabit new possibilities, willing to bravely embrace and get off on and tenderly love and tenderly talk to these parts of ourselves who can be updated and be enlisted and brought more fully into wholeness. What a much more lovely path forward that is than, trying desperately to seek for shelter in the ruins of the past.
Yeah. Beautifully said. And there's a few things that arise. And, so, you referenced the story of the binding of Isaac. And I think it's an interesting story because there's two interpretations. And the classical interpretation is, and in this story, Abraham is going to sacrifice his son Isaac. Well, part of the backstory of that is that Abraham's father, Nimrod, was going to sacrifice him at a certain point. So my teacher, Rebbe Gaffney, interprets this story in a different way, in which this is a story about the clarification of the God voice. And that actually what was moving through Abraham at that moment was a psychological repetition compulsion.
Oh, wow.
And so the repetition compulsion allowed, as it translated through his hermeneutic prism, it sounded like, this is what I need to do. I need to sacrifice my son. And then he clarified that voice and heard the true God voice, which was like, don't sacrifice your son. Love your son. And so, and it's not that one story is right and one story is wrong. I think there's beautiful interpretations and lessons from both. But this idea of continually clarifying the God voice and understanding what are my own motivations that could be in the subconscious or the unconscious, what traumas might be there, what desires and lusts might be there. And, I got so much criticism for talking about the mystical aspects of what I've heard. And everybody says, this is the Satan voice. and this is not the God voice. This is just your lust voice. And maybe, and that's what all of these, that's the process of all of these things. Like, okay, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm willing to ask that question. I'm willing to listen. I've heard lots of different voices, and I've heard, different things that have come through, and this felt real. I'm not saying that it is, but I listened to it, and the fruits, you shall know a tree by its fruits. Like, the fruits have been a great and beautiful love with a lot of, powerful meaning. So, and the fruits will continue to multiply as our lives go on, and people will either, be proved right or proved wrong, and that's okay, but I trusted what I felt and heard, and Vailana was with me in that process and has been with me every step of the way.
Yes.
And we've made choices every step of the way, hand in hand, arm in arm, as we've made these decisions. And so I think one aspect is clarifying the God voice. The other is clarifying your desire. So do what thou wilt. So in the lineage, there's a process called berur, which is the clarification of desire. And the end goal of the clarification of desire is so that your desires are actually ontically identical with the divine's desires. But to do that, you have to clarify your desires, which means you have to get out of the separate self construct. And this is something that the indigenous brothers and sisters, particularly of the Lakota tradition, I so greatly admire their teachings, because at the beginning or end of every ceremony, they say, Aho mitaku yeo yasin. We are all related. And this is not dissimilar from what Christ said when he said, love thy neighbor as yourself, which is really, in my interpretation, love your neighbor as thyself because it is thyself. You and your neighbor are a different fractal of the same self. So there's nothing that you can do to another that you're not doing to yourself. So to do what you will, you have to clear the distortion of believing that you are separate from everybody else that you're doing. So you have to make the whole ecosystem, and we're not separate from the earth. We can't continue to extract without giving back. We can't extract from a person without giving. There's a law of Ayni and reciprocity. And the further we go out of alignment with that Ayni or reciprocity, the deeper karmic debt that will start to compile, that will start to erode our own joy and happiness. And of course, that second law of about love. I don't believe that there is any truth that can be separated and disambiguated from love.
Yes.
Like, truth and love are synonyms. So to really love is to really be in truth.
Yes.
And that's the deepest lesson that keeps coming back, is okay, really, really make sure you're anchored to love. Never forget, Aho mitaku yeo yasin, we are all related. And clarify your desires. Be skeptical and question all of those voices that come in. Don't take anything at face value. Understand that there's our own hermeneutic prism, our own way that we translate things. And, then from there, I think all of those alchemical and magical practices that you can do when you've clarified all those things, they all become so much more potent. But, and so I think basically what I'm saying is yes, 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 and yes to everything you're saying. And then here's a layer of my own understanding that weaves in with everything that you were saying.
Yes. What an excellent layer it is. I love that. I've also had the great joy of spending time supporting friends who were on the Sundance path. And so being at Sundances and sweat lodges and receiving those wisdom teachings. And I heard you mention an encounter with buffalo recently, and I was curious about that. I had a fun one myself, so I guess I just I want to hear about yours.
Well, we had a very powerful, experience with Chief Bear Cross. And Chief Bear Cross is who I would say is a true Lakota mystic. Someone who, when he looks at you, you can see that he's seeing you and the dimensional reality of you in other worlds. And he felt compelled to actually gift me a buffalo war bonnet. And I was immediately blown away, whoa, and then immediately felt a newfound responsibility. But I cannot ignore the timing that he just gave me this buffalo war bonnet. And the buffalo represents the one who, when the storm is raging, they face into the storm and walk towards it, because they know that actually the way through the storm is through the storm, not running away from the storm, because you'll extend the time that you're in the storm, but actually to face it head on and say, if there are arrows, let them come at me. If there's hail, let them fall on me. And so in this kind of super mystical way, he gives me this buffalo totem, which is both a great honor and a great responsibility. And I felt that immediately. The first thing I said is like, I leaned over to Vailana and said, like, this was one of the greatest blessings of my life. And the weight of this responsibility is immense. And because not only was it the responsibility for what I'm taking on in my life, but also a connection that was formed with the Lakota traditions, where now, like, they are now part of my family in a way. And so, like, I can no longer look away from the suffering that's happening on the reservations. And it's not that I wasn't aware of it, but man, there's so much going on. Life is so hard. It's easy to just kind of turn your face away and say, like, so please, I hope somebody else, deals with that. Like, Bobby Kennedy, can you help him out, please? Because, like, I got my own troubles I'm worried about here. But now it's like, okay, so now this is part of my family now too. And now I have a responsibility, and that responsibility is to support that way of life and those people in a profound way. So that was my experience with the buffalo, which was, again, a great blessing and a great responsibility. And I don't think I'll fully understand why he did that and what it created until I look back with a lot of hindsight after many years. But I'm just now kind of like receiving it and saying, we did a podcast together too, which will come out. I don't know the timing, potentially right before this one or maybe right after, we'll see. But ultimately, like, wow, okay, now here's a new force in my life, and here's a new responsibility.
Yes. So I don't know precisely what motivated him to bequeath that amazing gift, but when I hear about this, I get very excited, because what my experience of buffalo has to do with the beauty of the sun dance. And I think of the buffalo as an expression of that energy that in the Kabbalah they call Tifereth, right? Beauty, the beauty way, which the Lakota also call their path, the beauty way. And that path of exquisite balance. And Tifereth is also the home of the dead and reborn gods, the dying gods, Osiris, Dionysus, Jesus, and that solar potency that I'm just guessing, I'm just floridly hallucinating. I'm imagining that the chief sensed that solar potency in you, because I can sense it, and that is the essence of the energy that is coming in on a grand scale, I believe, is this awakening of that solar inner authority energy, which can only be inhabited when the energy of all of the other spheres are in balance. And, and it's so the martial energy, that warrior energy, the soft Venusian energy, the Saturnian death energy, just everything is all lined up and all moving forward. That is the essence of the great work. That's what we all need to learn how to do. And I love that I love that what you're doing with your creativity and the conversations, so your poetry, your creative work, your work in the world, and these conversations that you're having are all conversations that are putting the enzymes in the collective that contribute to folks at home, wonderful folks at home, being able to take this in and use it as fuel for their solar consciousness. That, to me, is why the buffalo gift makes total sense.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for both your intellectual rigor and, your erudition of all of these concepts. And, I think that it's no surprise to me. I wasn't aware of the depth of the magical practices that you actually weave in to arrive at these, because, of course, it's the same with me. It's these great, humbling plant medicine journeys that have given me so much wisdom, and that then get codified by, knowledge systems that, I'm either learning or co-creating, or, but what a gift it is to the world that you exist. And that you're here as a vessel and a conduit, offering your own unique signature into that one divine tone, so that it becomes your own unique voice in this symphony of all of us as unique selves, singing our song, singing our way home.
It's so fun. I'm so curious. Have you, since you do Kabbalah work, have you ever tried any theurgy, Kabbalistic theurgy?
This is something that my wife has actually done a little bit more than me, but we haven't gotten into the kind of esoteric practices, and it's not that it's not available in what's being transmitted to me, but it seems to be, she has a great teacher who's, incredible, goes by the name Isis, and she teaches, a lot of this Kabbalist wisdom, and they do these kind of different magical kind of role-playing, embodying different sphirot, embodying different elements, and it sounds beautiful.
Yes, that does sound beautiful.
So ultimately, I'm open, I'm open to anything. I find like if it resonates with me, and I'll try anything. I'll try anything twice.
Yes. Well, I ask that because so I love the work that you just described. It does sound like a very potent form of ceremonial magic and theurgy. I guess I bring it up because I feel like not a lot of folks are aware. It's a little bit ironic in our American society. I feel like a goodly portion of people are aware about the possibilities of psychedelics and plant medicines and the deep, deep, rich wisdom of tribal ways, indigenous teachings. And it's interesting to me because I think there's less awareness that there is this inheritance from the Hermetic tradition. One of the ways it came through was in the 1890s in London. There was a group called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And they basically formed the foundation of what later became Wicca, Druidry, everything, interest in astrology, interest in crystals, that all, in a lot of ways, flowered from the work that the Golden Dawn did. They were doing theurgical, Kabbalistic work from the Hermetic tradition, which is a really intense way of opening up pathways, opening up consciousness and communion with that larger Rosicrucian tradition that Rudolf Steiner was connected to, that I've heard some of your other wonderful guests discuss. And so there's this live wire within. Sometimes people think that philosophy is detached from magic. Like, for years, there was this weird propaganda in academic circles, somehow pretending that, like, Plato was about logic and thinking. And really, Plato and all of his folks who came after him, the Neoplatonists, were all involved in mystery schools, right? Plato was an initiate of the Eleusinian mystery schools. His teacher Socrates, who he wrote about, was an initiate. And anyways, I find that not a lot of people know that when those mystery schools began to be persecuted by imperial Christianity around 400 AD, their teachers, their leaders went underground and went into basically little living room mystery schools in Athens, in Alexandria, in Sicily, and those blossomed into places where they learned to do theurgical workings, magical workings, in the tradition of their mystery school, but now not on a grand scale because they were in hiding. But these rituals, which include, Pythagorean elements that have come through in the Kabbalah, Hebrew names of God, Egyptian conceptions of the universe, all sort of syncretized together in Alexandria and got passed on for thousands of years in Europe through various, secretive traditions trying to protect themselves from the church, and then blossomed forth in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in London in 1890. And then, anyways, all of which is to say, I am so excited that you're interested to learn or to talk about some of this, because there's a specific little ritual that I think could be really, really cool. It's called the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Okay. That's so interesting to me that you haven't heard of it.
I guess I'm a bad Aleister Crowley.
You're a very bad Aleister Crowley because he did it all the time. The Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram is a famous move of protection magic. Mm-hmm. And what it does is the banishing is a little misleading because there's a bit of banishing in it. It banishes the heaviness of the earth element and opens up to the more awareness of the dreamlike fluidity of all things. But what it primarily is actually is an invocation of the archangels. Mm. So you call in the archangels of the Kabbalah all around you. And you practice uniting the 5 of your microcosmic self, which is the pentagram, with the 6 of the macrocosmic self, which is, of course, the hexagram, the seal of Solomon, the symbol of Tifereth, and that solar beauty. Mm. And it's just been that Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram. It's pretty easy. Folks, if they're curious about it, can find a lot on YouTube. Various people teach it, including a teacher I learned a lot from, Damien Eccles, who's deep into ceremonial magic. And anyways, I'm excited about more of the world getting to hear about this ritual and potentially learning about it, because I think it's somewhat of a lost key for folks in modern society that does connect to the foundations of the Western world in, Greece and Egypt and all of that, and can help us create that bridge that we've been talking about with the finite and the infinite. And to me, it's made the Kabbalah a very alive, a very potent thing.
That's beautiful. I'm so happy to hear about it, and this is another one of those instances where, out of my own necessity and my own also practice, right, I've come to my own rituals that are somewhat adjacent to this, but don't have the codification. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we do a very intense Wachuma Masada experience, like the strongest Wachuma, which is San Pedro cactus, but San Pedro was obviously renamed by the Catholics, but it was really called Wachuma by the indigenous lineage of Chavin. So in this intense ritual and 26 years of psychonautic experience, I've encountered a lot of demons.
Yes.
Like lots of demons. I mean, I can write a whole book on demonology.
Demons I have known and loved.
Yeah, exactly. So I see this, and I'll tell this story briefly because it's getting to the point where I had my own ritual similar to what you're saying, but without the codification. So I see this shape-shifting being that is shape-shifting between this black jaguar with red eyes and this larger kind of classic demonic shadowy figure with red eyes. But since I have such an affinity to jaguars, I was like, well, maybe it's not really a demon. Maybe it's not a demon. Maybe I should be curious. Because normally, I see a demon, I'm like, not today, Satan. Move on. That's strategy number 1. Mm-hmm. Don't give it any attention. Mm-hmm. But I was like, maybe. I'm curious. Mm-hmm. So then this shadow jaguar with the red eyes, and of course, shadow, red eyes, I know better. This is a demon, but I follow it, and I follow it in the astral way by giving it my attention. Mm-hmm. And then it opens up this portal to a portal to hell.
Yes.
And out of this portal to hell comes all of these fucking demons. So now I'm just surrounded by a horde of demons. So I'm like, okay, here we go again. Surrounded by a horde of demons. And the visions are crystal clear. I mean, this is not like I'm feeling things. It's like I'm seeing things. So I go into what my practice is. First practice, I call on my dragon guardian. So I call my dragon guardian. It's this giant gray dragon made of smoke that's appeared to me many times. So I call my dragon, be with me. And then the dragon comes in my vision. And then I call, next one I call is Yeshua, like Yeshua. Call in the boss right away, like Yeshua, like be with me. And then I can feel the kind of emerald glow of the unconditional love of Yeshua start to surround me. And then from there it's Michael, Archangel Michael, be with me. Archangel Gabriel, be with me. And then Metatron, be with me. And then I call on the ancestors, and in the Lakota ways, it's like the great rock walls of the ancestors, like come with me and surround me in a bubble of clear light that's beyond distortion. And I have my team. And then in this team, it's like I got my own Avengers, my angelic Avengers that are right there. And then I'm able to observe outside of this protected enclave, all the demons try to lure me in different ways, shapeshift into different things and I can just be in total peace because I've found a way that I can connect with the angelic entities and the powerful beings and allies that I have. So, and I don't know how similar that is to the type of ritual that you're doing, but it's in there seems to be some correlation.
Oh yes, that is quite similar. Quite similar. You add some pentagrams to that. That's what it is. Yeah. And the pentagrams are fun, though. A fun addition that I might try to interest you in, because the pentagrams. A pentagram inscribes the golden mean. So that infinite spiral of perfect symmetry, of perfect beauty, that infinitely extends backwards and forwards, which is the, to me, a very deep expression of divine creation and of how this cosmos, which is, somehow miraculously in proportion to the five being that we are, the pentagrammic being that we are, it is the proportions.
Yeah, like seeing Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man.
Yes, exactly. The Vitruvian Man. That's what I was looking for. So we're these little Vitruvian creatures, pentagram-shaped, star-shaped, because in many ways we are the core of the apple. And you cut an apple in half and you see that pentagram right there. That pentagram is this, it's the center of the torus field of the apple. And there's a way in which, the torus field of human consciousness seems to, bring this whole microcosmic world into being. So anyways, when we make a pentagram in the direction of a demon, one of the amazing things that it does is, for example, you can try this out in nighttime dreams. After one gets really practiced with pentagrams, you'll just spontaneously, you see something scary in a nighttime dream or on a psychonautic journey, and you make a pentagram, and the demon disappears. But it's not that the demon has, been killed. The demon has been reintegrated back into the whole. Like it's been reminded of the power of the symmetry and the beauty and the balance and the integration, and that authority has been inscribed over it. And with the inscription of that authority, it's that it loses its shape. And likewise, as you have experienced already, when you call in the presence of the angels and Yeshua, that's what you also see. The ancestors, you see this, they lose their power.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the Star of David, which is going back to the alchemical rebus, the union of masculine and feminine, the upright triangle representing the masculine, the downward triangle representing the feminine, and the balance of wholeness that comes when we form our own sacred union. And then when two people come together, each with their own internal sacred union, or more than two people come together, however many people come together in the sacred union amongst themselves, then they can become what we would call whole mates, which is like those who are in their radical wholeness, who choose to need each other and face a shared horizon. And
yes.
This is the path forward.
Mm-hmm.
This has been so fun.
Yes,
This has been so fun. We'll have to do another one. And I know that, there'll be a lot of people who are like, Pentagram, this is devil worship, this is all that. There's so many labels and names and things that are meant to keep people from exploring. And there's certain definitely dangerous territory. But feeling the vibration of love, feeling the calling in of the angelic helpers, feeling the actual, feel what was actually said, and the reverence for Yeshua, and feel all of that. And don't allow the programming and indoctrination to actually infiltrate and change the way that you see something. So even for me, Pentagram, I'm like, but then as I listen to you and I understand and I open my mind without fear, the thing that the Bible says more than anything, have no fear, to move beyond that fear and say, okay, maybe there's something to learn here for me, so it's been such a beautiful conversation. Thank you for also that psychological, spiritual healing process that we went through. Is super powerful.
That's just for the folks listening at home, in case they're curious, that's from the Destination Method, created by Dr. Robert D. McDonald. So his website is teloscenter.com. That's where I learned to do that and a whole lot of other amazing healing work. So I would love, if you felt like talking about that more, we can, anyways, all sorts of things to talk about.
So many more things to talk about. Where can people, obviously the book, Existential Kink, classic, available.
Wherever books are sold.
Yeah, wherever books are sold, literally.
Yes. And people, one of the main websites where people can get in touch with me is the immortalcollege.com. That's where a lot of my online courses are that Layla and David and my other wonderful friends do with me. And then sleepovermysteryschool.com is where I would suggest that people go. If they're interested, they can fill out the little form to apply for the mystery school. We take 30 people, and we usually get a flood of applications. And like I said, it's a deep in-person journey over 9 months. And we took a break this year, but we're starting again in 2026, so sleepovermysteryschool.com. Also, Layla and I do a fun little podcast where we just record ourselves on my phone and with our kids yelling at us and clanging pots and pans, but it's called Sleepover with Layla and Carolyn. So if you want to hear us talking about all sorts of things, you can check out the Sleepover podcast. Trying to think. Folks can join my email list. There's forms to join my email list at theimmortalcollege.com. There's also forms at carolynlovewell.com. I'm trying to think if there's other cool things that I do. I'm starting a magazine soon called Scarlet Woman, so that'll be around. Mm-hmm. And people can check out my Instagram. I'm at Carolyn Lovewell. And that's how to find me.
Well, there's a power in the name, and you certainly love well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for being here. It's been such a radical pleasure. Mm-hmm. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We love you, and thank you to our guests here.
Thank you so much.
We love you guys.
So fun.
Thanks for tuning into this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow me at Aubrey Marcus. Check out the Aubrey Marcus podcast, available everywhere. And leave a comment. Let me know if this video resonated or what else you would like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.